For centuries, the world believed him dead, a relic of a brutal past, a myth told in whispers among those who still dreamed of humanity's lost glory. They were wrong. Deep beneath the ruins of old Europa, buried in a tomb of obsidian metal and forgotten technology, something stirred. The darkness within the chamber had been absolute for over 300 years. No light, no sound, nothing but the faint, pulsing thrum of an ancient machine. Then, a heartbeat. The cryo-seal hissed as frost peeled away from the black coffin. Its surface, adorned with cryptic markings from a lost era, began to glow with crimson runes. The sound of hydraulics groaned, gears grinding against centuries of dust and time. Then the lid snapped open, a hiss of steam. A figure lay within, motionless, pale. But his eyes burned like dying stars. A gasp tore from his throat, his lungs greedily pulling in air for the first time in centuries. His body ached, muscles screaming as they reawakened. His mind, razor-sharp, calculating, processed the flood of information being fed directly into his cerebral cortex by the neural interface still embedded in his skull. A voice, synthetic yet ancient, whispered into his mind. Cryostasis disengage. Estimated time elapsed. 362 years. Systems at 87% functionality. Uploading historical data. Processing. He did not move. Not yet. Instead, he let the information flow into him. The fall of the old empire, the Dominion's invasion, the betrayal of Earth's leaders, the subjugation of mankind. His fingers clenched into a fist. So it was true. They had taken his world. His people. The coffin's interior flickered with holographic projections, grainy images of Earth's current state. Towering Veskar fortresses stretched across the land, their spires piercing the sky like spears through a quartz. Human cities, once shining with ambition and innovation, were now mere factories churning out weapons for alien masters. And the people, enslaved, broken, forced to kneel. The monarch's lips curled into something between a snarl and a smirk. They think I'm dead. A single step, then another. His body, enhanced beyond natural human limits, adjusted rapidly to movement. His mind, honed for war, was already forming a plan. He would not march into the light yet. No, that would be foolish. He was a ghost, a legend, a nightmare waiting to be reborn. Before the stars trembled at his name once more, before the Veskar Dominion suffered for what they had done, he needed two things: weapons and an army. And then he would remind the galaxy why humanity had once been feared. The Shadow Monarch had returned. The monarch moved like a phantom through the ruins of old Europa, his footsteps silent against the cracked stone. The city above had been rebuilt in the image of its alien conquerors, gleaming spires of Veskar architecture, towering above the remnants of humanity's past. Down here, however, among the buried skeleton of the old world, he was unseen. But he would not remain hidden for long. From the moment he had stepped out of his tomb, his war-born instincts had kicked in. The Dominion controlled everything now: the airwaves, the economy, the very breath of his people. They had spent centuries erasing him, reducing his rule to nothing more than a whispered myth. Yet, the moment he awakened, something in the universe had shifted. He felt it. The pulse of unrest, the quiet rage beneath the surface. And now he needed to make contact. The underbelly of the city was a maze of forgotten tunnels and abandoned sectors where the Veskar rarely bothered to patrol. Human refugees, outlaws, and scavengers had made it their home, living in the shadows, surviving off scraps, and evading the Dominion's enforcers. The monarch didn't hesitate. He knew exactly where to go. After all, his spies had built these tunnels centuries ago. It didn't take long before he was being followed. Footsteps, light but trained, a presence lingering in the dark. The monarch let them come closer, let them think he hadn't noticed. Then, without warning, he moved. In the span of a breath, he pivoted, seized the figure by the throat, and slammed them into the cold stone wall. A blade flashed toward him, but he caught the attacker's wrist mid-swing, twisting it with inhuman precision. The knife clattered to the ground. A woman, scarred, hardened by war, eyes full of fire. One of his people. She glared at him, even as she struggled in his grasp. "You move like a Dominion ghost," she spat. "Who are you?" The Monarch studied her. Not just a scavenger. Not just another survivor. She had training. A soldier, once. One of his. No, she was too young. She had never seen the old empire. But she had the fire of resistance in her. "I am the one your ancestors swore loyalty to," he said simply. Confusion flickered in her eyes. Then something else. Recognition. A legend standing before her. A name spoken only in whispers, now made flesh. "Impossible," she breathed. He released her. "Take me to your leader." For a moment, she hesitated. Then she nodded. "This way." As they walked, the Monarch could feel it. The embers of rebellion smoldering beneath the surface. Humanity had not yet broken. And soon, with his guidance, those embers would ignite into a wildfire. The time for shadows was ending. The first strike would come soon. And when it did, the Dominion would burn. The journey through the underground tunnels was silent, except for the occasional distant rumble of Dominion patrols above. The woman, who had finally introduced herself as Sarah Vale, leader of the Europa Resistance, moved with urgency. She was still wary of him, but she did not question him further. Not yet. The deeper they went, the more the air changed, no longer stale and lifeless, but charged, alive with something old, something waiting. Then they reached it. A vast metal door, rusted but unbroken, stood before them like the entrance to a tomb. Strange runic markings, unreadable to Sarah, but clear as day to the Monarch, pulsed faintly beneath layers of dust. Earth's forgotten vaults. Her people had tried for years to break through this place, searching for weapons that had been lost when the old empire fell. They had failed. Now, the Monarch had returned. Sarah gestured to the console, frustration evident in her voice. "We've tried everything. Hacked the system, used explosives. Nothing works. Whatever security this thing has, it's beyond us." The Monarch stepped forward, brushing his fingers over the control panel. It was old pre-Dominion, a relic of a time when Earth did not bow, a time when it conquered. His biometric signature pulsed through the system. The machine hummed. Then, a deep, grinding groan echoed through the cavern. The locks, once unbreakable, released with a metallic hiss. Sarah took a step back, shock flashing across her face. "You just... How?" The Monarch's eyes gleamed in the dim light. "Because this place was built for me." With a thunderous clank, the doors slid open. Hashtag, 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 the arsenal of a forgotten king. The vault stretched for miles beneath the earth. Racks of armored exosuits, untouched by time, stood like silent sentinels. Rail cannons, plasma lances, grav shield generators, weapons beyond anything the Dominion allowed humanity to possess. And at the far end of the chamber, resting beneath thick layers of stasis fields, war machines, towering, sleek, and designed for destruction. These were the last remnants of Earth's true military might. Machines that could fight on land, in space, in the void between stars. Sarah's breath hitched. This could turn the tide. The Monarch allowed himself a small, cold smile. It will. The resistance fighters, once desperate and struggling, now stood before the tools of their salvation. Hope flickered in their eyes, but with it came something else. Fear. They had fought in the dirt with stolen rifles and makeshift explosives. Now, they wielded the weapons of a god, and standing among them was the god himself. The Monarch turned to Sarah, his voice low but commanding. "Summon your people. We go to war." Above them, in the Dominion's mighty towers, the aliens still believed they ruled this world. By dawn, they would learn the truth. The night sky over New Europa was unnaturally quiet. No sirens, no alarms, just the artificial hum of Dominion warships lazily drifting through the clouds, their captains utterly unaware that the world beneath them was about to erupt. In the shadows of a ruined cathedral, Sarah Vale knelt beside the Monarch, watching as resistance forces took position along the abandoned streets. The once ragged rebels now stood clad in reclaimed exo-armor, their weapons no longer cobbled together from scraps, but forged in the war vaults of old Earth. Their first target, the Vesker Central Command Spire, a towering fortress at the heart of New Europa, a symbol of alien dominance, a monument to humanity's servitude. Sarah glanced at the Monarch, his black combat armor absorbing the faint glow of the city lights. He was still, unnaturally so, watching the Dominion stronghold like a predator stalking prey. "We should move before patrols cycle back," she whispered. The Monarch did not look at her. "No." Sarah frowned. "What? We're already in position. We." Then she felt it. The ground trembled. A low, distant rumble echoed through the streets, like a storm approaching from beyond the horizon. Sarah turned to the Monarch, eyes widening. "What did you do?" The Monarch finally smiled. "I sent them a message." Then the sky erupted in fire. Hashtag, 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 the first strike. From the outskirts of the city, plasma artillery cannons, powered by ancient Earth technology, unleashed hell. The first shot obliterated a Dominion watchtower in a single fiery blast. The second ripped through a patrol column, turning alien war mechs into molten wreckage. And the third. It struck the base of the Vesker Command Spire, causing the very foundation to shudder. Instantly, chaos erupted. Sirens wailed. Dominion gunships scrambled into the air. Vesker soldiers poured into the streets, barking orders in their guttural tongue. But the rebels were already moving. Urban strike teams detonated hidden explosives, collapsing roads and sealing off Dominion escape routes. Snipers in newly acquired stealth rigs picked off enemy officers, their shots clean, precise. And from the rooftops, rebel soldiers fired stolen plasma rifles, cutting down confused alien enforcers before they could organize. Sarah turned to the Monarch, breathless. "You planned this." The Monarch tilted his head. "You thought we were here to fight a battle." He stepped forward, watching the chaos unfold. "We're here to send a message." Then he moved. Like a shadow, like death itself. His black blade carved through Veskar armor as if it were paper. His movements were too fast, too perfect, enhanced by centuries of bioengineered combat mastery. He caught a plasma bolt midair, redirecting it into a Dominion war beast, blowing its head apart. The soldiers fighting beside him watched in awe. He wasn't just leading the charge. He was the charge. And above them, the Dominion warlords watched their empire burn. Their worst nightmare had returned. The Shadow Monarch had begun his war. The Dominion had ruled Earth for 3 centuries. In all that time, no rebellion had ever lasted more than a week. Until now. The attack on New Europa's command spire had shaken the Vesker Dominion to its core. The once untouchable fortress now lay half-collapsed, burning against the night sky. Streets that had once echoed with the footsteps of conquerors now ran red with their blood. Across the planet, the news spread like wildfire. The resistance had struck back. But more importantly, humanity had a leader again, and the Dominion had no idea who he was. The Dominion's response. Aboard the Vesker dreadnought Karveth, orbiting high above Earth, Warlord Gorvek stood motionless before a massive holoscreen. His mandibles twitched in irritation as he watched the battle footage. Grainy images of a figure in black armor, moving like a wraith, tearing through Veskar troops like they were nothing. A human. A single human. Gorvek's second-in-command, a reptilian officer named Vector, stepped forward cautiously. "My lord, the rebels have armed themselves with advanced weapons, ones we have never encountered before." Gorvek's claws dug into the armrest of his throne. "Weapons? From where?" The humans have no military power. They are cattle. Vector hesitated. We believe these weapons are pre-Dominion, from the old war vaults. Silence. Then the throne room trembled as Korvac slammed a fist into the steel wall, denting it. This is impossible, he growled. We buried their past. We erased their history. His glowing yellow eyes narrowed at the footage. Yet here it was. A rebellion. A new leader. A ghost of the past, rising from the ashes of an empire they had destroyed. Korvac turned sharply. Deploy the exterminators. Burn New Europa to the ground. I want this monarch brought to me in chains. Vector nodded. And if we cannot capture him? Korvac's mandibles spread into something that almost resembled a smile. Then break the humans until they bring him to us themselves. Hope awakens. In the ruins of the Vesker stronghold, the monarch stood before the gathered resistance leaders. They looked at him with equal parts fear and reverence. Sarah Vale stepped forward. We've intercepted Dominion transmissions. They're preparing a planetary crackdown. Extermination squads. Orbital bombardments. The monarch did not blink. They fear us now, he said simply. And that means we are winning. A silence settled over the room. Then one of the younger fighters, voice hesitant, asked, "What do we do next?" The monarch smiled. Now, his gaze turned upward, toward the stars. Now we show the galaxy that humanity is not broken. Now, we go beyond Earth. The Dominion had always assumed humanity was trapped, caged on their own world, too weak to challenge their masters. They were wrong. Deep beneath the ruins of old Europa, in the war vaults long thought lost, the monarch had found the key to Earth's liberation. A fleet, hidden away centuries ago, locked in cryogenic preservation, lay 3 battle-ready warships from the final days of the old empire. They were smaller than the massive Dominion dreadnoughts, but what they lacked in size, they made up for in speed, stealth, and firepower. And now, for the first time in 300 years, they would fly again. The first offensive. Above Earth, the Vesker fleet tightened its grip. Patrols doubled. Orbital defenses powered up. Entire human sectors were locked down. The Dominion was preparing to burn the rebellion out, but they did not expect a strike from the stars. As the Vesker dreadnought Karveth hovered over Earth's largest slave city, New Tokyo, preparing to unleash a devastating orbital bombardment, the shadows moved. Then the void came alive. Out of nowhere, 3 sleek, black warships dropped out of the dead zone in Earth's magnetosphere, a place no Dominion vessel dared to enter due to its interference with their tracking systems. These ships were not Dominion. They were human, and they were hunters. The lead ship, the Revenant, fired first. A kinetic rail slug, moving at a fraction of light speed, tore through the Karveth's primary engine block. A second ship, the Phantom, swept in from below, unleashing precision plasma fire along the dreadnought's exposed fuel lines. Explosions erupted along its hull, rupturing bulkheads, sending entire Vesker squads into the cold vacuum of space. On board the third ship, the Wraith, the Monarch stood at the helm, watching as chaos unfolded. The Vesker had never considered the possibility that humans could fight them in space again. They had grown comfortable, complacent, and now they would pay the price. Storming the dreadnought. As the Karveth burned, the Monarch and a squad of elite rebels launched from the Wraith, streaking through space in boarding pods. They crashed through the dreadnought's failing defenses, cutting their way inside with precision plasma charges. The Vesker fought back, but they were not ready for this. The Monarch moved like a specter, his black blade slicing through armored enforcers as if they were nothing. His warriors followed, cutting through the alien ranks with stolen Dominion weapons, turning the enemy's technology against them. Deep in the command center, Warlord Korvac's face twisted in fury as the alarms blared. Impossible. He had ruled over Earth for centuries. Now, for the first time, he was afraid. The doors to the bridge exploded inward, and the Shadow Monarch stepped through. You're not afraid enough. The bridge of the Karveth was a storm of flashing red lights and wailing alarms. Dominion officers scrambled to reinforce their positions, but the moment the doors exploded inward, they knew death had arrived. The Monarch stepped forward, his black armor slick with the blood of fallen Veskar warriors. His crimson blade hummed with raw energy, dripping alien ichor onto the command deck. Behind him, the Resistance strike team secured the control terminals, cutting off escape routes and jamming enemy communications. At the heart of the bridge, Warlord Gorvik stood, his towering frame casting a monstrous shadow beneath the flickering emergency lights. His obsidian black battle armor pulsed with embedded energy nodes, and in his four-clawed hands, he wielded a massive graviton warblade, a weapon few could lift, let alone wield with precision. But Gorvik was no ordinary warrior. He had conquered Earth 300 years ago. He had crushed its armies, razed its cities, and buried its past. And yet, the past had returned to bury him. His mandibles flared as he took a slow step forward. You are no king. You are a relic, a fool clinging to a dead empire. The Monarch tilted his head slightly. You fear a dead empire, the Veskar warlord snarled. Then he struck. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. The duel begins. The graviton warblade swung with the force of a collapsing star, tearing through the reinforced deck plating where the Monarch had stood a fraction of a second earlier. The Monarch moved like a shadow, ducking beneath the strike and countering in a single fluid motion. His crimson blade slashed upward, aiming for Gorvik's throat. CLNG. The Veskar caught the strike midair, his armored gauntlet absorbing the energy discharge with a crackling burst. He twisted, hurling the Monarch backward. The Monarch landed in a crouch, recalibrating. Gorvik was strong. Too strong. His power armor enhanced his speed, and his brutality was unmatched. But brute force alone was not enough to kill a ghost. Gorvik lunged, his blade carving the air in devastating arcs. The Monarch dodged, parried, redirected. The fight became a dance of death, a clash of skill versus savagery. The bridge trembled around them, sparks raining from shattered consoles. The Monarch's eyes narrowed. He had to end this. Hashtag, 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 the death of a tyrant. As Gorvik swung again, the Monarch sidestepped, letting the blade barely graze his armor. It was a trap, a feint designed to draw the warlord forward. And Gorvik took the bait. The Monarch twisted inward, stepping past the strike, and, in that instant, his black blade sank deep into the warlord's chest. Gorvik staggered. His mandibles trembled. His four clawed hands grasped at the searing wound, as if he could will his body to function again. But the Monarch did not hesitate. He stepped closer, pressing the blade deeper, until it pierced through the warlord's primary heart. The Veskar's glowing yellow eyes flickered. You cannot win, Gorvik rasped. The Monarch leaned in, voice cold. I already have. With one final push, he ripped the blade free. Gorvik collapsed, his massive form crashing to the floor with a thunderous finality. The bridge fell silent. The warlord of Earth was dead, and for the first time in 3 centuries, humanity was no longer under Dominion rule. The moment Warlord Gorvik fell, a silence washed over the bridge of the Karveth, the kind of silence that came before a storm. Then, the Dominion fleet awoke in fury. Alarms across the dreadnought blared in chaotic urgency. Emergency broadcasts screamed across every Veskar channel. Their warlord was dead. Their leader, the one who had ruled over Earth for centuries, had been slain by human hands. For the first time in 300 years, the Dominion feared humanity. But fear did not make them retreat. It made them desperate. The Dominion's wrath. Above Earth, the Veskar fleet abandoned all pretense of control. The moment Gorvik's life signature flatlined, new orders were issued, no longer one of subjugation, but of total planetary extermination. The Dominion had lost their leader. So now, they would burn Earth to ash. From orbit, dozens of Veskar warships realigned, their main cannons powering up. Massive energy spikes crackled in their cores, ready to unleash planetary annihilation. But humanity had prepared for this. As the first Veskar warship unleashed a devastating orbital beam, aimed straight for New Europa, it met an unexpected force. The moment the energy pulse struck Earth's atmosphere, a hidden planetary defense grid activated. Titan-class railguns, buried deep beneath the ruins of Earth's forgotten cities, came online. Anti-orbital missiles, constructed in secret, launched from hidden silos. And from the darkness of space, the three ancient human warships, the Revenant, Phantom, and Wraith, lulled a counteroffensive. They were outnumbered, but they were faster, more advanced, and more ruthless. The battle for Earth. In the chaos of the Dominion fleet's confusion, the Revenant struck first, firing its spinal-mounted railgun straight through the hull of a Veskar battlecruiser, splitting it in two. The Phantom moved like a ghost, weaving between enemy fire, disabling targeting systems, and tearing through escort ships. The Wraith, under the direct command of the Monarch, led the assault on the Dominion's flagship. The sky became a graveyard of burning warships. The Dominion fleet, caught off guard, began to falter. They had always thought of Earth as conquered. They had never imagined humanity would strike back. The Monarch's final gambit. But the Monarch knew, even with Korvik dead, even with the Dominion fleet crumbling, this war would not end here. The Dominion would return, with more ships, more warlords, and a vengeance unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Unless humanity did what had never been done before. Unless they took the war to the Veskar homeworld. The Monarch turned to his commanders. Prepare the fleet. Sarah Vale's eyes widened. You're serious? The Monarch's gaze was unwavering. If we stay on Earth, they will come again. And next time, they'll bring enough ships to glass the planet. He turned toward the stars. We don't wait for extinction. We don't hide. He looked at the resistance. We take the fight to them. A hush fell over the bridge. Then, one by one, the soldiers nodded. Humanity would not be chained again. And as the first war fleet of Earth prepared for its final battle, the Dominion received one last message. Humanity does not kneel. Humanity does not forget. Humanity is coming. Epilogue. The Shadow Monarch rises. The Veskar homeworld, Travask Prime, was a planet that had never known fear. For centuries, it had stood at the heart of the Dominion, untouched by war. Until now, from the depths of space, an unknown fleet appeared on their long-range scanners, small in number, but carrying a name that, in the Dominion's darkest nightmares, now meant death. Earth's fleet had arrived. And at the helm, the Shadow Monarch stood in silence, watching the Dominion's world loom before him. For 300 years, the Veskar had ruled over Earth. Now it was his turn to rule over them. Begin the attack. The war for humanity's vengeance had just begun.